I'll never forget in the summer before the film was complete that I had these transcribed interviews from this 1991 hearing in my editing suite, if you will, in my office. And there were 360 pages or something like that of these transcribed stories of people testifying before the Food and Drug Administration. And you're right, it is extremely in-depth, and you have thousands upon thousands of pages of research and transcribed interviews and testimonials and the rest of it. And there comes a point where you have to give up to instinct completely if you're going to succeed. And one of these instances was I was trying to take this material and turn it into literally a 6 or 7 minute segment from 42 people who testified in one voice. My aim was to make one voice out of these 42 people. So in other words, someone would start the story about getting prescribed Prozac, and then someone would take the ball from there and say, well, a week after I began Prozac, and then the next person would pick it up and say, perhaps I started to have side effects, and then the next person would pick it up. Yeah. So this whole string, as you'll see in the film. And so I was in the summer, it was extremely hot in Cleveland, Ohio, on the banks of Lake Erie. And all of these pages are literally strung from the ceiling, attached from the ceiling, all the way down to the ground. And there are rows and rows and rows of these testimonials. And at some point, I closed my eyes because I knew the material so well, too well. And I couldn't select. I was too foggy. I could not get a breakthrough on how to utilize these wonderful human voices that were so tragically important. And so I literally closed my eyes for a few minutes, and these things are swaying in the wind and the rest of it in this very hot day. And when I opened my eyes, I literally started going, this quote, that quote, down here, up there, then this, then this, then this, then this. And that is how the segment that occurs in Generation RX came together, solely by human instinct.
The doctor told me that this wonderful new drug, Prozac, would really get me through this rough time that I was having.
Prozac, new on the market, seemed the perfect drug for me, or so said my doctor, because of the minimal side effects, namely weight loss.
I literally quote my physician, quote, Suzanne, sometimes patients lose 5% of their body weight, but then we can never be too rich or too thin, can we? End quote.
We trust our family doctors. My family doctor trusted Eli Lilly.
My first reaction came at 2 weeks. I remember sitting in the car, and I reached over and I grabbed my husband, and I said, I feel like I'm dying. I felt like I was leaving my body. I took Prozac for exactly 11 days, during which time I experienced annoying and increasing dimness of vision, irritability, headaches, and tension.
And only 3 days after being put on Prozac, I started having terrifying nightmares.
The 4th week, I had total loss of appetite, complete insomnia. Anxiety literally was pouring out my ears.
By the 14th day, I was experiencing such intensified fear that I could not stand to face life as it was for me anymore.
I'd wake up screaming, and the nightmares always had something to do with death.
I immediately had severe headaches, violent thoughts in nature, which is totally against my character. I had never had violent thoughts before. I'm a pacifist.
Where suicide had never been a logical solution for any reason for me. I took the 9mm automatic, sat down on the bed, and put the gun to my head.
Because I tried to commit suicide in front of my 5 children.
My wife shot and killed both of these 2 boys right here.
Took a 12-inch butcher knife and stabbed himself violently in the abdomen once, and then proceeded to do it twice. Thank God I was a lousy shot. I was a victim. Lily, you answer me. You tell me what happened to me.
She turned the gun to herself and shot herself twice. Now she's in jail for murder.
Well, I'm not a doctor, but I wouldn't think you would have to be a mental heavyweight to soon figure that Prozac...
I was only put on for weight loss. Weight loss! My sister did commit suicide in front of Lindsay,
Another woman spoke.
That gun, I later learned, was loaded with hollow point bullets, and I shuddered
the
to
plot
think what it
thickens
was
here.
here.
Year and a half
That the
later,
only way to have peace and serenity again was to die.
Do all of you want to take this drug? Do all of you want to walk around humiliated for the rest of your life?
But I did this right in front of my son.
As you hear the many stories today, you can see we are real people, not small percentage numbers of a minority suffering these silenced adverse effects. Please, look at us. Listen to us.
Today, I'm here to stand up for myself, my right as a human being, which I feel I was robbed of.
I want to ask y'all, don't let this happen to nobody else. These are real people. You know, these murders and things are senseless. You know, it's time to put a stop to it.
That's why the FDA is out there, to help us, to protect us.
Are the issues that you deal with in Generation RX just in America, or is this a worldwide phenomenon that we're seeing?
Oh no, this is clearly a worldwide problem, and it's a problem here in the UK, very clearly. I conducted interviews here in the UK, as a matter of fact, and included a number of families, including the Blackburrows from the UK, and a woman named Linda Hercombe, who wrote a book called Losing a Child. And I think when you have, it doesn't matter if it's a nationalized health service or not, because in the US, the vast majority of people are using conventional medicine as well. But what happens is that people, the professionals, the medical professionals, disassociate themselves from the prescription of these drugs to the worst case scenario.
Yeah,
and they don't consider that, and they don't think it's prior to Generation RX, I don't believe that they thought it was a serious problem. And that's indicative of medicine in general, I believe. It's, you know, when you can only spend 5 to 7 minutes with a patient, then it's hard to get to know what those patients endure on a daily basis outside of the medical office, isn't it?
So do you, are you more of the persuasion that this is ignorance, or that this is some kind of malevolent intention behind it on the part of somebody trying to make a quick buck from drugs that aren't tested properly? Is it a genuine mistake, or is this, you know, is this being pushed?
Well, it's clearly being pushed, but that doesn't mean I very rarely do I call the integrity of medical doctors into question. The vast majority of medical doctors are good people who are very busy, and especially in a system like the UK. I mean, they're not wealthy.
No,
in the UK. I mean, if they're a GP, they are not a wealthy individual. They became a doctor with the right reasons in mind, I believe. In the US, it's a different scenario in terms of personal wealth and the rest of it. But what doesn't change is the fact that they have 5 to 7 minutes to spend with a patient. This is completely absurd, and why a holistic medical approach is often so much more productive for the patient, and because they are involved in their own care. The doctor spends an hour and a half on the initial visit getting to know their diet, getting to know their stresses, where do they work, how many kids do they have, just getting to know something about the person that they're going to, quote, prescribe something for. So I don't think that there's something insidious necessarily from the side of medical professionals, as I do that they don't understand that the scientific studies that have been used to push these kinds of drugs across the spectrum, and it's the same with heart drugs or diabetes drugs or on down the line, it's pharmaceutical drugs in general. They don't, there's very little time for these medical doctors to qualify whether or not the studies are accurate. And in most cases, they're not accurate. It's in one of their journals. If it's in the American Medical Association Journal or the BMJ here in the UK, they think it's legitimate. And
well,
why wouldn't they?
Wouldn't you think exactly?
Why wouldn't they think it was legitimate? It's supposedly a scientific study being put forth to benefit mankind and to benefit medicine. So the fact of the matter is that especially in psychiatry, these psychological drugs, the science is exceedingly shoddy, shockingly so. And that's a really critical distinction between some of the other drugs that certainly do have a very strong place and a role to play. But the science behind SSRI medications, the science behind antipsychotics, which are used for, quote, bipolar disorder, the science behind stimulant drugs like Ritalin used for ADHD are sadly lacking. And frankly, people are paying the price for that lack of integrity in terms of the science.